Actually, I am pausing much.
Gary?
So I'm going to talk real fast. No. Okay. So here we go. We need to get the. I didn't pause. Okay. So we'll get this figured out. Right now, we're going to do poll everywhere. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Robin. Okay.
Let me. You gonna do just the orange? Yes.
Hello?
Let me start the recorder in the middle.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so, yes, part of what we're trying to do, of course, today is to get your feedback. And it's our intent to seek meaningful and ongoing feedback for policy development and implementation. And so we're choosing to use Poll Everywhere as a part of the presentation so that we can have that interaction. I want you to know that we have other opportunities, many other opportunities, not just today, for you to provide feedback. So let's move quickly to Poll Everywhere and get that set up. I know that some of you have been in a session already this morning where you've done that. What you're seeing on this of the Senate Education Committee. So thank you for being here. Okay, did anyone want the survey questions as a hard copy before we move on? We'll have a few questions that are just demographic questions, and then Superintendent Hoffmeister will begin her presentation, and then embedded in the presentation will pop up some more questions for engagement, really, and that's what we're most interested in hearing. Okay, so this should be our first demographic question. Here we go. So if you would please respond, you're only making one response. I know you might be actually a teacher and a parent, but really in thinking about today, you're representing this one role. So hopefully you'll respond in that regard. In case you can't see that, it says school administrator, then teacher, then paraprofessional, specialized instructional support personnel, community member, parent, business leader, student, and other. So the second demographic question, asking about what community or school type that you represent. Take a minute to see that fill in. While you're doing this, just so you know, these are all going to be used with our ESSA state plan. So there are certain questions that we have asked a certain way because of the prescriptive nature of the federal law, okay? So I know that some of you were saying, I don't like how some of these questions were asked because they weren't open-ended enough. That's why. We have to get certain answers out of certain responses in some ways, okay? There are other opportunities though, and we want to hear from you as soon as we get moving. And there are boxes in the online surveys for other that are open-ended, okay? Okay, moving to the third question. What part of Oklahoma do you represent? And then what group do you represent? Or groups. So this is one where you may select more than one. Select all that apply. And as you select more than one, just put a comma in between those options. Or if you're using the screen where you can see the options, you can tap more than one.
fascinating. All right, I think we're getting close to wrapping this up. I'm gonna lock that in. All right, so just a little bit of background for you, why we're here. We want to hear from you regardless, but we have a great excuse and reason, and that is the repeal of No Child Left Behind has ushered in a new law, and that's a federal law called ESSA for short, but it's the Every Student Succeeds Act. And the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was first passed in 1965, and it was really a civil rights issue. And this is something that you need to keep in mind as we think about what we do under our federal law, ESSA, which is really going to return more of an emphasis of policy and decision-making to the local states. And then we want to push that down into the districts where we can. There are some things that will remain at the state. For instance, school accountability report card. That's going to be a state report card, so there'll be uniformity there. But there's many opportunities for local decision-making and input that we want to continue a dialogue with you. But one thing you're going to hear is equal access, and that's something that we want to think about equity with our students. So, next slide. In 2011, our state applied for a waiver. So we're still under a waiver until really the end of this month. On August 1, that changes and we're under the new law. And this is going to require that we have some refocusing of what we do with college and career readiness, how we differentiate instruction, and how we recognize how those groups of students that are in various, in school lingo, we call it subgroups. I'm not sure I like that term because it somehow implies that some kids are sub. And really it's just a smaller group of students within our overall population. So we need to have, ESSA requires, and I think most of you in the room would agree, we need to have more of a focus on how are the students doing in all of those smaller student groups in our schools. And so that will be a new focus. And then also instruction in effective leadership. All right, so then, am I moving for you fast enough? Okay. I think that you all already understand this particular slide. We've kind of talked about it, but we will see. Let's just stop for a minute and think about how long did we have No Child Left Behind? Does anybody remember? It's like 14 years. Started in 2001, it was implemented, and it went all the way for over a decade and some. So even though it's to be reauthorized, and we look at these as only a certain amount of time, I think we need to plan that this is going to be something with us for quite a number of years, even beyond what we originally think, if we have No Child Left Behind to compare it to. All right, so then, highlights of ESSA, real simply, and I don't want to read all of this to you, but I'm just going to hit some highlights. So what has not changed? What has not changed is that we still need to assess our students in 3rd through 8th grade in math, in English language arts, and in high school, same thing, but then there are 3 different times we assess science in different grade bands, okay? So we do that right now in 5th, 8th, and then once in high school. ESSA creates an opportunity for us to pilot new initiatives. We are a state right now with a lot of instability because we have new standards. So some states that might be looking at something new and innovative may be a state that's had the same standards in place for many years. We want to be cautious about some of the things that we try right now and make certain that we do well what is foundational and what needs to be building a platform so that we can be innovative in all the ways available in the future. But let's do what really makes sense for us in our state, recognizing the context that we are in today, especially with budgets, because those kinds of systems require a lot of funding. We have flexibility to get your stakeholder input, and that's what we're doing today. And then we also have increased flexibility with how we spend federal dollars. And this is really opening up a good opportunity for us, and you'll want to be sure to go to some of those sessions on the title dollars and some of the presentations prepared for you there. All right, so standards. We have new standards in math, English language arts, and we are very excited that then we are going to be driving policies based a lot on local state policy decision making, and we want to have a real era of inclusiveness and one where we don't just do things because the U.S. Department of Education decided one day to send out a dear colleague leader and tell us we had to do it, but instead we want stability where we have strategic planning in place and we are able to make informed decisions based on evidence and what makes sense in our state's context. Okay, so this really gives us a new opportunity because our state legislature came together with, and really all the school leaders and community members who said, we've got to refocus and rethink assessments. So we do have new state law that is repealing, for those of you who may not realize, the end of instruction tests. Those 7 tests that we have been using since 2001 are, wait a minute, did I get that wrong? 2004. 2005 is about where that started. I was thinking of No Child Left Behind. So for about 10 to 11 years, we've been using those end of instruction tests. Those are gone and decoupled from graduation requirements. So we're in a time of transition this year. So what you see this year is also going to be a little bit complicated in terms of the fact that we are also testing new standards. So if there were no changes at all, you should be aware that this year the test results would be coming back later than usual just because we have new standards. And so there's a process called standard setting, and that is something that we have to do when you have new tests, right? And so that is like that's called kind of where the cut scores are set. And it's a process that involves a lot of people with technical expertise, people within our state, those in the classroom are a part of that. Many of you in this room may have participated in that. Over time, it takes time after the tests come back, after the raw test data comes back. So that happens over the summer. So that's going to be lengthened, and I just want to prepare you for that. But we also have other issues that are going to cause us to have the assessments coming back a little later than normal. And you all are going to give input, and there's a poll out there for you to help us with that. Okay, and we also have another representative with us, Representative Glenn Mulready. I understand you're in somewhere back there. There you are, over there. Behind the bookcases, he's reading a book back there. So we're glad you're here. So glad you're here.
Okay, for the next poll, you should be seeing this. How should we measure student progress? You do select all that apply. The fourth option, an example, of course, for college and career readiness assessment might be an ACT or SAT. Again, this is another example. If you're choosing other, that you would have an opportunity later to go in and explain. There are open responses in a little bit. The same is true for those. So this is just to get you to start thinking.
Okay. Everybody understands statewide assessments. Those are the ones that are criterion reference. They are measuring our standards. Benchmarks would be something similar to the STAR tests, which have kind of a benchmark of where you could be. That's one example. Teacher-created assessments, I think we all, those who are instructors, understand that. And then a college and career readiness tool. The only one given in Oklahoma has been ACT as the dominant test of the Higher Ed Board of Regents. So that's so far been the key tool. All right, thank you. All right, let's respond to that. So those who said 30% benchmark, I'm curious, can you shout out some examples of what you have in mind? Just shout it out and I'll repeat it. Oh, we've got 2 mics here. 30% of you might have thought that was good. We want to hear it. Yes?
I'm thinking smaller bites. For the kid isn't stressed over trying to remember some things that they learned in August. And we're not spending a month reviewing the whole year before we take the test.
Excellent.
Smaller chunks.
So that's smaller bites. I liked the way you said that. All right. Anybody else?
I personally think it's good to have it as part of a wider system. I think it's good to have benchmark assessments as part of a larger system, so not only benchmark assessments, but to be able to see how students are progressing over time.
And you know, this is a great example for how the third grade RSA law can be applied. If a student meets that requirement early, and it may be on some kind of benchmark assessment, there is a way to alleviate the stress that had been perceived as the only option for students when they took a spring test for third grade.
Okay, now this question is asking of these goals of a state assessment system for you to choose what you believe would be maybe the top 2 most important goals.
Okay, and just to read these options aloud, the first one, so that everyone in the room can see these, give a snapshot of a student's performance as a single point in time, or the next one is measure growth of individual students from year to year, or provide feedback to teachers and school leaders for professional development, and then finally, use for school accountability. So the question is, and you can mark the 2 most important goals of a state assessment system. 2 of those 4 options. So it looks like what we're seeing is people want to see that they would measure the growth of individual students year after year, and or year to year, and then provide feedback for the professional development. So we really do want to act on evidence, and I think that we certainly see that as a powerful tool that could be available for our schools as well as our teachers in the classroom. And this is why we do want you to get results back as fast as possible. So brace yourself for this transition year, because that is not going to be optimal, okay? But we can't change that, and we'll talk with you, and we're surveying many of you about which option to choose. There are 3. So there's an online survey if you were not in the assessment meeting, and we would love for you to go there to weigh in on that. When you have time, you can really study the charts and think it through. Okay, next.
I have a comment. If I
Yes,
might,
please.
Question. Oh, there we go, thank you. Can we go back a slide?
Sure.
Okay.
Can you go back? Back.
There, okay. With respect to measuring the growth of individual students from year to year, and we know how important that is, do you find that to be inconsistent with removing the value-added component from the assessment, which provides that information?
Okay, so your question though was related to only for teachers to have the growth, or for schools, or for looking at the student that's making, how you apply that? You're
Yes,
saying,
ma'am. The student, I understand we're removing the value-added component.
well, the value-added component wasn't necessarily lost. It just is optional as one of the quantitative indicators. So I think that for districts, and we know there's one very large district in this area in northeastern Oklahoma, and that's Tulsa, and they will hold to that. Okay. I think it also, we need to make certain that we remind ourselves the context that we are really working within, and that is, it's very expensive to do some of these initiatives that we would love to do and or introduce into the state. But now this is a district choice. So if a district chooses, like in Tulsa, there's been a great commitment along with dollars to make certain that they can do that well. Okay, good. Great question, great conversation. All right, so now accountability. So this is when we say accountability, often what we mean is the A through F grading system for schools. And that's really now going to need to be very different in some ways than what we have had in the past. It is going to have meaningful differentiation in schools of those smaller groups of students. So an example would be our special education population, our English language learners. But now it's also going to include other categories of students, our foster students, for example. We have not collected this data in that same way. We are not used to seeing that in the same way that we will now need to provide that. So we're looking at a system that will have academic proficiency on state assessments, graduation rate for high school, English language proficiency, and these are all set out in the federal statute, growth or another statewide academic indicator for K through 8 student success, and then the 95% assessment participation rate. That remains. Okay. Any comments or questions? Okay.
I think it's coming up. You should be seeing this. Then there it is. So in this one, you will select 3. You're seeing the choices of standardized test scores, graduation rate, school culture, opportunities for advanced coursework, opportunities for extracurricular activities, and a measure of teacher quality. So asking the 3 most important indicators, you'll be able to select 3.
So this is really thinking through, if we were designing that right now, the new school report card, what would this look like? And so let's just take a look. How much, you're asking, yourself, how much should we be counting graduation rate? And by the way, currently it's a bonus point. It does not have the weight it should. In fact, that is something that we have had to find a way around the current system because it does not satisfy federal requirements. And so we will make certain we get that right this time. Okay, so it looks like graduation rate is something that 30% of those who answered on this feel should be a real important indicator for college and career readiness. Also the advanced coursework. This is where we really want to think about how our budgeting affects the ability for students to advance. And sadly, when we have the kind of cuts to our budget, it's those AP courses that are either not going to have a teacher that can be dedicated to that class, or we won't have the ability for students to take those tests. So this is really something that I hope that we will be able to resolve. It greatly impacts students. Okay, next.
Okay, in this question, what are the most important things schools can do to help students succeed? This is an open response, so we'll give you a little bit extra time, but keep in mind that you are able to go in and take this same survey on our website. And so as you're thinking here, you can continue that thinking on our website.
All right, so the question is, what is the most, or what are the most important things schools can do to help students succeed? Try to think as succinctly as you can. Like, what's the big thing we need to do for kids? And you'll see some of those are starting to populate. Increase parent involvement, individualized instruction, connect families to schools, remediation in math and reading, create engagement opportunities for kids. I love seeing that word engagement coming up over and over. I think we recognize this is something that we have to continually seek and cultivate. Just as we might think we've got that in one place, we have all new families and students starting at that pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, or coming in middle school and starting to integrate into the culture that you have created. So one way someone wrote is, we've got to support the schools more. We need to provide courses and training for those not college-bound. Excellent. And then a low teacher-student ratio would help. Others said, provide wraparound services to meet the needs of the whole child and to have high expectations for them. Support emotional and social development of students. Help them learn to be thinkers. Truly get to know them. It's about a relationship. Teacher quality being key. Well, this is great. Hold parents more accountable. How do we do that? And what about those who don't have parents? We have to answer that. What is our strategy? What is our strategy for those? We're in a state with the highest population of female incarcerated adults. And then we have so many kids in foster care. Our strategy has to think about all of that. Culturally responsive pedagogies and practices. More accurate grading, that's interesting. All right, good. Any further comment? Does anybody want to say anything beyond what you've typed? We'll have maybe an opportunity to do that as we kind of go through this. So hold your thought, if you will.
Okay, another open response. What are the qualities of a school you would want your child to attend? Possibly some of the same responses.
So on this, you might think, what does it look like? How does it feel? What does it do? Someone said safe, engaging principal. Rigorous. Boy, good communication with teachers and administrators. Caring teachers, truly engaging environments. Teachers who collaborate. We saw earlier just a glimpse at the Iowa model. I would love to see that kind of collaboration and coaching, but it takes money to do that, and it takes time. But we have a superintendent here that's going to be modeling that here in Oklahoma, I heard. So we're excited about that. I won't tell you the district, because I don't want anybody trying to leave where they are to go to that. We want it in your place, everywhere. But he's here. High quality teachers with a positive learning environment, not a testing environment. And I really do think you will see and feel a difference when you go back to your schools this fall, especially if you're in a middle or high school setting, because those testing windows are not going to be something that will be experienced until the spring, really. When you're used to those EOIs that start up at the end of the coursework in the fall, and then there's a testing window for makeup, all of that's going to change. And then for those who have block schedules, it was even more frequent. Okay, this is great. Thank you for what we're collecting here and your input on this. This really will help us as we start to think then, how do we measure that? Okay, so school improvement. So states must use evidence-based interventions. That's part of our federal law, and that's good practice, and we want to do that. So let's think now about that. And as you think about that, let's think about the fact that specific prescribed school improvement models are no longer set like they were in No Child Left Behind. Now we're able to do that in a context that will make sense in our state. So one of the things we talked about at the very beginning of the morning was just the time where I was able to testify to Congress about the fact that this kind of very topic that we need to be, yes, hold us accountable, but don't tell us how to do it. Let us find what works best that's evidence-based, but that will actually work in our state. So when we think about that, that's the next train of thought I want you to be in when we do these next questions. All right. So right now, there are some options, and this is just kind of what we do. Comprehensive support and improvement. The lowest performing, or 5% of Title I schools on the State Accountability Index, they're going to get comprehensive support and improvement. That's a new category. Also included in this, under school improvement, are high schools with less than 67% graduation rates. And then the third is schools with underperforming subgroups that do not improve after a state-determined number of years. So we'll want your input on what is the right number of years. And then targeted support and improvement are for schools with consistently underperforming subgroups, as defined by state law. Okay, so you might recognize those as what their labels used to be, but this is what they are for the new law under ESSA. All right.
Okay, for this question, you're selecting two. What top two supports should the State Department of Ed provide for low-performing schools? The options here being financial support, evidence-based instructional resources, examples of schools that have improved, professional development for curriculum instruction and assessment, data literacy, technical assistance support.
And just a reminder, you can select two. This is really great. I'm so impressed, actually, the way this is being answered. Because the two top are really about the instruction and quality of instruction and the need to support teachers where they are and with an ever-changing classroom. So this is terrific. So the 34% was PD for curriculum instruction and assessment. There is so much more we could be doing. Of course, it does take resources to do this, but this is a priority. We have so many brand new teachers, and we have so many folks who don't stay in the classroom longer than the first 5 years. And so when you have that kind of turning over, it really is difficult to have just that seasoned kind of bank of experience within schools. And then the need for coaching is something you saw in the video clip that we showed this morning from Terry Hood and the Iowa model. All right, and then evidence-based instructional resources. Yay for evidence-based. We really want to make certain that we are doing things that aren't just, popular or might seem like good ideas, but we really know there's data behind it to support the outcome we're trying to achieve. So great, thank you.
Okay, in this next poll, what role should the State Department of Ed play in the development of a local intervention plan? Options being, well, you're choosing only one. The option being none, 1 to 2 site visits per year, 1 site visit per quarter with professional development options, and then continual partnership with ongoing support. So choosing one.
And after you plug in your answers, I'd really like to hear from you in the audience while others are collecting their thoughts and plugging in. Maybe you can tell us why you answered the way you did. Just somebody pop up any.
The reason I picked the very last one, and I was a principal for 6 years with a struggling elementary school, and I was a reading first school. And because of the continual support from the Oklahoma State Department of Education, we moved our building to one of the top elementary buildings in the district.
That hear some more in just a second, but thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
Okay, for this question, you'll choose 3. Which of the following do you believe is most critical to improving a low-performing school? Options being curriculum, classroom assessment, district benchmarks, instruction, school culture, student, family, and community support, professional growth, development, and evaluation, effective leaders, organizational structure and resources, and comprehensive and effective planning. Choosing 3.
All right, it looks like the top 3 are, it's about leadership, effective leaders, number 1. And then school culture. And then the student, family, and community support. Boy, I mean, this is truly an exciting time in Oklahoma because I feel there is more focus on education and an appreciation for just a glimpse into the classroom that's really at a more heightened level of awareness right now. It's a tough time, but it's a time where I think we have captured the attention of those who may not have kids in school anymore or who have yet to consider that where they're going to go to kindergarten or pre-K. So this is an exciting time, and you, I think, have really articulated that it is about leadership and culture, and then that nucleus family and all the support we surround them with.
Okay, in this section, teacher and leader quality, it's kind of ironic that I'm the one taking over as you're coughing, because this is really my passion, probably primarily. As we look at what ESSA is offering, actually we're quite excited because the calculation and percentage that would be state set-aside funding has increased. And so as you're seeing here, Title II Part A, specifically those funds. And so we want to know from you, as we are using those funds, what would be the most meaningful pursuit. There's also additional set aside that would be 3% specifically, that would be for leadership development, knowing that the slide previous that you had that interest and possibly concern about leadership. And so I think this is a good opportunity to be thinking about how we could best utilize the title funding for teacher and leader quality. Really what I just said, you're seeing some of those listed here, especially that 3%. There will be a poll in a minute that will only give you just a, maybe 8, I think, options of some of the things that we could do with professional development funds. And so there are many other things that would be possible. But again, activities and programs and offerings that support our teachers. I'm most interested especially in retaining teachers. Certainly we have a shortage issue with recruiting and attracting, but there's just such a emphasis, I think, right now with retaining our great teachers and actually elevating them into some leadership roles. And I think what we're seeing as provided by ESSA, some of those things can happen. So with this poll, this is the one I was mentioning, I think there are about 8 different options here, and it's not a comprehensive list. So in thinking of that title funding that could be used at the state level, you are choosing 3, so I'll read these in case you can't see them. Refining teacher and leader evaluation systems, efforts to attract effective teachers and leaders, efforts to retain effective teachers and leaders, assisting districts in developing differential pay and other incentives to recruit and retain educators in high-need areas, develop and assist districts with teacher, leader, career ladder opportunities, Some district superintendents are sitting here today, and I've worked with them just in the last few weeks and trying to figure out how we could do that, how we could fund that framework, teacher leader career ladder. Better implement induction and mentoring programs for new educators, and then revise and innovate certification system.
Okay, and I'm gonna, while you're answering those, I'm gonna just try to make it, go on, turn on. There. I just want to hear a little bit from you, and we've got some mics around here, but think about that answer and tell us how you answered and why.
I answered in regards to differential pay and then the career ladder, because I'd like to see Oklahoma recommit to the National Board Certification Program and utilize some of those funds for that program, and also the career continuum and ladder that MBBTS is really starting to promote as a way for teachers to become highly effective and support their growth throughout their careers.
Let's go ahead and take a couple more. Anybody else? Other thoughts? How about back there? We've got a mic ready. Come on. Anybody? Yeah, okay, right here.
One of the ones I selected was better implement induction and mentoring programs for new educators. I actually graduate in December. I'm going to be a new teacher. And secondary math, you can keep it applied. But coming into this, I'm not from Oklahoma. I've been in Oklahoma for about 6 years and went back to school later in life to do this. And something that was new to me was being in a rural area. There were so many small school districts at my disposal. So when I knew that I had all these different internships, where do I want to teach? What do I want to teach? And that I kind of went on my own and interviewed districts within a 30-mile radius of where I lived, and went to see, what do you have to offer? What is your department like? Can I shadow? What is going to make me want to come here? And so after interviewing those schools and teachers and principals and systems and stuff, I was then able to say, okay, no, maybe this is great, and to know not only what I want in a school or in a district, but in the supportive administration. One school I went to, I was just blown away. Other I was able to quickly cross off, but just seeing what they offer for new teachers and how to retain, like they were saying, I think that's huge, because with so many districts as new teachers, it's intimidating to know, okay, where do I go from here? You're just thrown into a classroom, and I don't know, but for what it's worth.
Boy, that is very insightful too, just to hear how you went through that process and how wonderful. I have a sister that entered into the teaching profession as well, and started out substituting and kind of got to do that, and found which school culture she felt she really fit with, and where her heart just kind of beat for those kids. So that's wonderful. My sister's right there, by the way.
Okay, for this question, it is an open response. How can the State Department build capacity for all teachers and leaders to demonstrate that they can serve low-income students, minority students, students with disabilities, and English learners? So I'll give you a little bit of time to populate that.
Okay, it's buffering. Here we go. Show where and how it's being done well, someone says. Diversity training, culturally responsive training, PD opportunities, paid training in best practices. Okay, good. Let's collect some more. More of, I think, a general consensus. Oh, yeah. Thanks for the little shout out. Instructional videos. This is really powerful medium for us. I think this is something we can really work to capture best practices and make them available for people to be able to see. What about the PD on your plan? For those of you who catch that, the State Department of Education, has some of those opportunities available in the English language arts area particularly, as well as others. All right, good. We're gonna have to move a little faster, so I won't be able to read all of those. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This one. Okay, outcomes for all students, and again, all means all. So ESSA requires that states ensure that all students have significant opportunity to meet and exceed requirements. ESSA has placed a new focus, a real renewed focus on 3 things: long-term and ambitious goals for performance, with interim achievement goals for all students. So we'll be articulating that. Better preparing diverse learners, our English learners, our children with disabilities, our migratory children, American Indian and homeless children, for success. And then 2-way meaningful communications in a variety of forms with parents. Is anybody using text messaging as a way to connect with parents? Okay. That seems to be, there's data that shows that more of our Hispanic population respond through text messaging. It's very interesting. Great. All right, let's go to the next.
Okay, if you would, on this one, you will be answering the question, do you believe a strategy to align assessment, accountability, and teacher quality with academic standards so that the 4 of those work together? We tend to think that's natural, but we would like to know if you think that's a meaningful pursuit on our end, worthy of the time that it would take.
Okay, it looks like overwhelmingly you agree. Yes. We think that's best practices, so that we will likely continue down that path. All right, next.
Okay, this is an open response. What can the State Department, together with school districts and community-based organizations, do to support a learning environment to better prepare diverse learners for college and careers?
Okay, I want you to think on that, and let's hear from somebody in the audience while you are sending those in. So what can school districts, community-based organizations do for those special subgroup populations, our smaller groups? Who's got an answer or suggestion? Come on. Anybody? Rob? Okay, say something.
Well, I think one of the big challenges we all have is the chronic absenteeism and some new approaches to getting not just these smaller groups, but all students. Because if they're not in school, we can't serve them, we can't educate them. And I know it's a problem in every district I've been in, just that small population of kids.
We saw some polls like that too. Anybody else? We're gonna have to move fast, so I'm gonna keep going here. It looks like some of the, we'll register that, and all of this will be available for people to review over time.
This is actually the last question, but not the end of the presentation itself. But we're asking here to gauge your interest and or willingness to participate in one of these ways. Ways being allow parents to serve on decision-making committees, use child and or parent-led parent-teacher conferences, offer parents the opportunity to have input in their child's college and career pathway, host, attend family fun nights, or the last one, digital communication, allowing parents to interact with teachers and or other parents. This is really getting at this 2-way communication that we are seeking with you. beginning now and ongoing. So you do choose all that apply, all that you have interest and commitment to.
Okay, and while we're gathering that, let's look here. Looks like the digital communication allowing parents to interact is key. And then allowing parents to serve on decision-making committees is very highly valued, as well as hosting family fun nights. That sometimes that is the best way to get parents in the door. We know pizza really makes a difference, doesn't it? Okay, so we have a transition timeline. We need you to think about this next year as a transition, okay? So we're going to familiarize all of those that we meet, and we'll be in an effort to give you the kind of an overview of the new law. Then in August, the waiver will expire, as I mentioned earlier, and then we have a transition period to work with you to develop the state plan. So there will be some formal work that happens, and then there will be some of this broad stakeholder engagement. One of the easiest ways to get involved is just to send us an email and say, sign me up. I really want to give more time to this for the unique population, maybe, that I have expertise or serve currently. And then the new plan will come out in the year 17-18, and that must be compliant with ESSA. So we have a lot of work to do to get there. Okay, so Oklahoma's ESSA state plan will focus on advancing the vision of a strategic plan. We want to really build achievement for academic excellence for each student, thinking about them individually, leading toward, kind of, I alluded to this in the morning comments, an individual academic plan for students. And that's going to take time to develop, but we're wanting to shift time toward that and instruction and away from test delivery and all of the testing tasks that went with a lot of tests that we will no longer have. Building capacity internally in the agency as well as externally in the field. And then truly championing a culture of trust and respect. We want to be transparent, and we want to return the information that you ask of us as fast as we can, but we also want to be able to hear from you and respond, and then collect it and work with those in the field who have expertise and also represent a very diverse population, and take all of that into effect as we move forward. So we're going to be also working with those outside of education as well as those inside, but certainly recognizing that it is the teacher in the classroom that has the greatest effect on raising academic achievement for kids. And that's why we're going to keep and hold fast to our focus on solving the teacher shortage and the professional development and growth of our teachers. I've got to. So we're down to our last 2 minutes. We're going to just flip through some of this and just let you know that go all the way to, yeah, that one. So here's where you can go to engage further. This was just a very general survey of information that we wanted to glean, but we would like a deeper dive from you for those who are willing, and you can go to the website there. We also will continue going with our advisory groups, and then here are some of our key milestones. So I'm going to read it in case you can't see it. July through August, we're going to collect early feedback for the drafting of our state plan. In October, draft 1 is due. November, additional opportunities for feedback will be provided to all stakeholders. And then in February 2017, draft 2 of the plan will be proposed and presented for review and comment. In May 2017, the governor will be given a 30-day review period. This is all part of ESSA. Of course, that's smart. We want to all be in the same, on the same plan and working to be ready to submit in July. 2017, so that we are ready to give USDE a sound plan, one that makes sense in our context with our students, and one that will also drive the kind of outcomes we hope to achieve. So thank you again. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for your beginning voice in this process, and I hope that you will continue to stay engaged. Thank you. Just a reminder, if you did not sign in, we do need to collect your name, and it is in the very back of the room. Be sure to do that. And then there's one more slide that has the email address that will let you contact us. There you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you.